The Murder at the Vicarage by Agatha Christie. Chapter 2. Griselda is a very irritating woman. On leaving the luncheon table, I had felt myself to be in a good mood for preparing a really forceful address for the Church of England Men's Society. Now I felt restless and disturbed. Just when I was really settling down to it, Lettice Prothero drifted in. I use the word drifted advisedly. I have read novels in which young people are described as bursting with energy, joie de vivre, the magnificent vitality of youth. Personally, all the young people I come across have the air of amiable wraiths. Lettice was particularly wraith-like this afternoon. She is a pretty girl, very tall and fair and completely vague. She drifted through the French window, absently pulled off the yellow beret she was wearing, and murmured vaguely with a kind of faraway surprise, "Oh, it's you." There is a path from Old Hall through the woods which comes out by our garden gate, so that most people coming from there come in at that gate and up to the study window instead of going a long way round by the road and coming to the front door. I was not surprised at Lettice coming in this way, but I did a little resent her attitude. If you come to a vicarage, you ought to be prepared to find a vicar. She came in and collapsed in a crumpled heap in one of my big armchairs. She plucked aimlessly at her hair, staring at the ceiling. "Is Dennis anywhere about? I haven't seen him since lunch. I understood he was going to play tennis at your place." "Oh," said Lettice, "I hope he isn't. He won't find anybody there. He said you'd asked him." "I believe I did, only that was Friday and today's Tuesday." "It's Wednesday," I said. "Oh, how dreadful," said Lettice. "That means that I've forgotten to go to lunch with some people for the third time." Fortunately, it didn't seem to worry her much. "Is Griselda anywhere about? I expect you'll find her in the studio in the garden, sitting to Lawrence Reading." "There's been quite a schmozzle about him," said Lettice. "With father, you know, father's dreadful." "What was the she-whatever it was about?" I inquired. "About his painting me. Father found out about it. Why shouldn't I be painted in my bathing dress? If I go on a beach in it, why shouldn't I be painted in it?" Lettice paused and then went on. "It's really absurd, father forbidding a young man the house. Of course, Lawrence and I simply shriek about it. I shall come and be done here in your studio." "No, my dear," I said, "not if your father forbids it." "Oh dear," said Lettice, sighing. "How tiresome everyone is. I feel shattered, definitely. If only I had some money I'd go away, but without it I can't. If only father would be decent and die, I should be all right." "You must not say things like that, Lettice." "Well, if he doesn't want me to want him to die, he shouldn't be so horrible over money. I don't wonder mother left him. Do you know, for years I believed she was dead. What sort of a young man did she run away with? Was he nice? It was before your father came to live here. I wonder what's become of her. I expect Anne will have an affair with someone soon. Anne hates me. She's quite decent to me, but she hates me. She's getting old and she doesn't like it. That's the age you break out, you know." I wondered if Lettice was going to spend the entire afternoon in my study. "You haven't seen my gramophone records, have you?" she asked. "No. How tiresome. I know I've left them somewhere, and I've lost the dog, and my wristwatch is somewhere, only it doesn't much matter because it won't go. Oh, dear, I am so sleepy. I can't think why, because I didn't get up till 11. But life's very shattering, don't you think? Oh dear, I must go. I'm going to see Dr. Stone's Barrow at 3 o'clock. I glanced at the clock and remarked that it was now 5:20 to 4. "Oh, is it? How dreadful if they've waited or if they've gone without me. I suppose I'd better go down and do something about it." She got up and drifted out again, murmuring over her shoulder. "You'll tell Dennis, won't you?" I said yes, mechanically, only realizing too late that I had no idea what it was I was to tell Dennis. But I reflected that in all probability it did not matter. I fell to cogitating on the subject of Dr. Stone, a well-known archaeologist who had recently come to stay at the Blue Boar, while he superintended the excavation of a barrow situated on Colonel Prothero's property. There had already been several disputes between him and the colonel. I was amused at his appointment to take Lettice to see the operations. It occurred to me that Lettice Prothero was something of a minx. I wondered how she would get on with the archaeologist's secretary, Miss Cram. Miss Cram is a healthy young woman of 25, noisy in manner, with a high colour, fine animal spirits, and a mouth that always seems to have more than its full share of teeth. Village opinion is divided as to whether she is no better than she should be, or else a young woman of iron virtue who purposes to become Mrs. Stone at an early opportunity. She is in every way a great contrast to Lettice. I could imagine that the state of things at Old Hall might not be too happy. Colonel Prothero had married again some 5 years previously. The second Mrs. Prothero was a remarkably handsome woman in a rather unusual style. I had always guessed that the relations between her and her stepdaughter were not too happy. I had one more interruption. This time it was my curate Hawes. He wanted to know the details of my interview with Prothero. I told him that the colonel had deplored his Romish tendencies, but that the real purpose of his visit had been on quite another matter. At the same time, I entered a protest of my own, and told him plainly that he must conform to my ruling. On the whole, he took my remarks very well. I felt rather remorseful when he had gone for not liking him better. These irrational likes and dislikes that one takes to people are, I am sure, very unchristian. With a sigh, I realized that the hands of the clock on my writing table pointed to 5:15, a sign that it was really 4:30, and I made my way to the drawing room. 4 of my parishioners were assembled there with teacups. Griselda sat behind the tea table trying to look natural in her environment, but only succeeding in looking more out of place than usual. I shook hands all round and sat down between Miss Marple and Miss Weatherby. Miss Marple is a white-haired old lady with a gentle, appealing manner. Miss Weatherby is a mixture of vinegar and gush. Of the two, Miss Marple is much the more dangerous. We were just talking, said Griselda in a honey-sweet voice, about Dr. Stone and Miss Cram. A ribald rhyme concocted by Dennis shot through my head. Miss Cram doesn't give a damn. I had a sudden yearning to say it out loud and observe the effect, but fortunately I refrained. Miss Weatherby said tersely, no nice girl would do it, and shut her thin lips disapprovingly. Do what? I inquired. Be a secretary to an unmarried man, said Miss Weatherby in a horrified tone. Oh, my dear, said Miss Marple. I think married ones are the worst. Remember poor Marley Carter. Married men living apart from their wives are of course notorious, said Miss Weatherby. And even some of the ones living with their wives, murmured Miss Marple. I remember, I interrupted these unsavoury reminiscences. But surely, I said, in these days a girl can take a post in just the same way as a man does. To come away to the country. And stay at the same hotel, said Mrs. Price Ridley in a severe voice. Miss Weatherby murmured to Miss Marple in a low voice, and all the bedrooms on the same floor. They exchanged glances. Miss Huttnell, who is weather-beaten and jolly and much dreaded by the poor, observed in a loud, hearty voice. The poor man will be caught before he knows where he is. He's as innocent as a babe unborn, you can see that. Curious what turns of phrase we employ. None of the ladies present would have dreamed of alluding to an actual baby till it was safely in the cradle, visible to all. Disgusting, I call it, continued Miss Huttnell with her usual tactlessness. The man must be at least 25 years older than she is. 3 female voices rose at once, making disconnected remarks about the choir boys' outing, the regrettable incident at the last mothers' meeting, and the drafts in the church. Miss Marple twinkled at Griselda. Don't you think, said my wife, that Miss Cram may just like having an interesting job and that she considers Dr. Stone just as an employer? There was a silence. Evidently none of the 4 ladies agreed. Miss Marple broke the silence by patting Griselda on the arm. My dear, she said, you are very young. The young have such innocent minds. Griselda said indignantly that she hadn't got at all an innocent mind. Naturally, said Miss Marple, unheeding of the protest, you think the best of everyone. Do you really think she wants to marry that bald-headed dull man? I understand he is quite well off, said Miss Marple. Rather a violent temper, I'm afraid. He had quite a serious quarrel with Colonel Prothero the other day. Everyone leaned forward interestedly. Colonel Prothero accused him of being an ignoramus. How like Colonel Prothero and how absurd, said Mrs. Price Ridley. Very like Colonel Prothero, but I don't know about it being absurd, said Miss Marple. You remember the woman who came down here and said she represented welfare, and after taking subscriptions she was never heard of again, and proved to have nothing whatever to do with welfare. One is so inclined to be trusting and take people at their own valuation. I should never have dreamed of describing Miss Marple as trusting. There's been some fuss about that young artist, Mr. Redding, hasn't there? Asked Miss Weatherby. Miss Marple nodded. Colonel Prothero turned him out of the house. It appears he was painting lettuce in her bathing dress. Suitable sensation. I always thought there was something between them, said Mrs. Price Ridley. That young fellow is always mouching off up there. Pity the girl hasn't got a mother. A stepmother is never the same thing. I dare say Mrs. Prothero does her best, said Miss Huttnell. Girls are so sly, deplored Mrs. Price Ridley. Quite a romance, isn't it? Said the softer-hearted Miss Weatherby. He's a very good-looking young fellow. But loose, said Miss Huttnell. Bound to be an artist, Paris models. The altogether, painting her in her bathing dress, said Mrs. Price Ridley. Not quite nice. He's painting me too, said Griselda. But not in your bathing dress, dear, said Miss Marple. It might be worse, said Griselda solemnly. Naughty girl, said Miss Huttnell, taking the joke broad-mindedly. Everybody else looked slightly shocked. Did dear Lettice tell you of the trouble? Asked Miss Marple of me. Tell me. Yes. I saw her pass through the garden and go round to the study window. Miss Marple always sees everything. Gardening is as good as a smoke screen, and the habit of observing birds through powerful glasses can always be turned to account. She mentioned it, yes, I admitted. Mr. Hawes looked worried, said Miss Marple. I hope he hasn't been working too hard. Oh, cried Miss Weatherby excitedly. I quite forgot, I knew I had some news for you. I saw Dr. Haydock coming out of Mrs. Lestrange's cottage. Everyone looked at each other. Perhaps she's ill, suggested Mrs. Price Ridley. It must have been very sudden if so, said Miss Huttnell. For I saw her walking round her garden at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and she seemed in perfect health. She and Dr. Haydock must be old acquaintances, said Mrs. Price Ridley. He's been very quiet about it. It's curious, said Miss Weatherby, that he's never mentioned it. As a matter of fact, said Griselda in a low, mysterious voice and stopped. Everyone leaned forward excitedly. I happen to know, said Griselda impressively. Her husband was a missionary, terrible story. He was eaten, you know, actually eaten, and she was forced to become the chief's head wife. Dr. Haydock was with an expedition and rescued her. For a moment excitement was rife, then Miss Marple said reproachfully, but with a smile, Naughty girl. She tapped Griselda reprovingly on the arm. Very unwise thing to do, my dear. If you make up these things, people are quite likely to believe them, and sometimes that leads to complications. A distinct frost had come over the assembly. Two of the ladies rose to take their departure. I wonder if there is anything between young Lawrence Redding and Lettice Prothero, said Miss Weatherby. It certainly looks like it. What do you think, Miss Marple? Miss Marple seemed thoughtful. I shouldn't have said so myself, not Lettice, quite another person I should have said, but Colonel Prothero must have thought. He has always struck me as rather a stupid man, said Miss Marple. The kind of man who gets the wrong idea into his head and is obstinate about it. Do you remember Joe Bucknell, who used to keep the Blue Boar? Such a to-do about his daughter carrying on with young Bailey. And all the time it was that minx of a wife of his. She was looking full at Griselda as she spoke, and I suddenly felt a wild surge of anger. Don't you think, Miss Marple, I said, that we're all inclined to let our tongues run away with us too much? Charity thinketh no evil, you know. Inestimable harm may be done by the foolish wagging of tongues in ill-natured gossip. Dear Vicar, said Miss Marple, you are so unworldly. I'm afraid that, observing human nature for as long as I have done, one gets not to expect very much